Hey, I'm Di McQueen, licensed clinical social worker, family and addiction expert. I'm here with Dr. Brian Jackson, my longtime cohort who specializes in the field of addiction. Welcome to Healing Families Shattered by Addiction.
Di and I have worked with addicts, alcoholics, and their families for over 30 years combined. Our podcast and coaching programs focus on families who have a loved one suffering from addiction. Our experience has been that this disease affects families as much, if not more, than the addict or alcoholic.
Is your world spinning out of control? Are you codependent? Are you experiencing worry, loss of sleep, and difficulty concentrating? If so, you're in the right place. Brian and I have both personally lived it, learned it, and now we're going to teach you tools and techniques on how to get your life back that you thought was shattered by addiction.
Okay, let's dive in. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Healing Family Shattered by Addiction. I am Dr. Brian Jackson, and I'm here with my partner, Di McQueen, and we wanted to bring you a new topic today. I guess that's what we do every couple of weeks, bring a topic. But we were really thinking about this and talking about it, and it kind of dovetails into what we do and how we work with families. But it's about how do you stay calm in the middle of chaos. And when I say chaos, when you have a loved one that is suffering from addiction, it affects the whole family. It's like this hurricane that comes in the house and everybody can get caught up in it and everybody's freaking out. Where when there is a crisis, what do they always tell us? Stay calm. So what we see a lot of is family members will, somehow, some way just get attached to the ups and downs of the person that has a substance use disorder. And it can be a lot of ups and downs. There's a lot of ups and downs for the substance use or people who are abusing substances, but also for the family members. And so we don't want to, attach our wagon to whether they're up, they're down, they're using, they're not using, because then we really just give ourselves over to that. And, how do we stay calm in the midst of, these whirling dervishes of addiction? So, Di, I don't know if you want to speak to that, because it's easier said than done.
It is. But once you start doing it, you realize, oh my goodness, I really had myself so worked up because I didn't have any tools. Right. And I love the whirling dervishes. It's really, we call it the merry-go-round of addiction for a reason. They get you on the merry-go-round and you're spinning and spinning. And before you know it, you're like, I don't know if I'm coming or going. I don't know if I'm up or if I'm down. And it is, for my own personal self, I can attest to the fact that, you make yourself completely, I would call myself insane at that time for sure. And just trying to follow the bouncing ball of where it is. And because I didn't have tools, right? Like I had no understanding of what do you do and how do you jump off that merry-go-round or the train or the whirling dervish. I love that one, B. That's great. So yeah, you need tools, right? You need tools in your toolbox. And being able to understand that, it is once you get that a little bit, you don't have to be in that whole whirlwind all the time. It's very freeing to not be jumping on the train and trying to figure out how to take care of yourself in the midst of that chaos. So
yeah, so on a daily basis, we keep doing what we've been doing and we keep getting what we've been getting, which is it's not fun, but you get comfortable with it and you don't know what to do. Like I want to get out of this, but yet I'm in it. And how do I get out of it? And that's why I think it's so important to talk to somebody, who's in the field that understands how this disease affects the family and that you are powerless yourself over how this person acts, doesn't act, whether they go to treatment or they don't go to treatment. And we lose ourselves. We stop working out. We stop going maybe to church. We stop, going to the doctor or the dentist or taking care of ourselves because we're so caught up, frozen, and whether this person is going to stop or not stop. And so, what we don't want is your happiness to be contingent on whether or not the person that you love gets help and gets well. And
It,
that's really hard to detach from, and
it
but
is. It
you
is.
have to save yourself in the midst of all this, because if you're not well and they're not well, then we've got an entire family that's sick.
Right. And, I mean, it is the truth. If you're in the midst of, if you're in the vortex of a tornado, it's really hard to pull yourself out of that, depending on how high those wind speeds are and everything else that's inside of there. But when you realize, as soon as I pop out, I don't have to go back in. The biggest issue that I remember was, you're so far in it, and the more that you get into it, the more depleted you are. So you don't have the energy to try to figure out what to do next. You're terrified. There's all these emotions going on. And instead, what you're doing, or what I was doing, especially, but we see it time and again, right? We're taking on all their stuff rather than taking care of us. So I loved how you go, let's get some help, let's start to make sure that you maintain the daily things that make you feel good. That, the big one that I see an awful lot, and B, maybe you can agree or disagree, which is how, when the family starts to get sick, the addict or alcoholic or whatever in the family starts to recognize how to play each other off of each other. And so it really becomes, before you know it, everybody's arguing, everybody's fighting, nobody knows who to believe. They don't trust one another. You don't trust yourself. And it's such a war. I mean, really, it felt like I was in the midst of a tornado. So that's where Bry is really stressing to you, as well as I. When you pop out of the tornado, you've got to have tools and techniques in place to be able to start to understand it really is a choice as to whether or not I want to go back into the whirlwind of all of this. And people will say, I hate it, I hate it, I hate it, but they don't know what to do so to get out. Besides seeing a
Yeah,
professional, it's really hard.
yeah. I mean, like you were saying, the whole family starts, arguing, pitting one against the other, and that's, the manipulation of the
Yep.
family member who is using to kind of deflect, get the magnifying glass off of them. And now there's total chaos, So we're talking about staying calm in the midst of chaos. And I think what a lot of family members forget is that the person who's using is making choices, right? They're making choices to use, and it's affecting the whole family. But you have all the rights to make choices for yourself, right? They're making their choices. You can make your choices. So if what we encourage people to do is, okay, I can't control that over there, but I can control what I do, how I react, how I don't react, what boundaries that I set. And I think what we see a lot of times is there's this fear associated with setting a boundary, i.e., if you keep using, you're going to have to leave the house. This fear that, oh my God, if I kick them out of the house, they're going to, you know, do whatever or possibly die or whatever. But really, if they stay in your house and keep using at the rate that they're using, they could die in your house. So, it's step by step. And I think, as we hold the hand, I guess, if you will, of the family member, because we've been there, we know what it's like, um, we lived it, we've learned it, we teach it is one of our sayings.
Yes.
So, if we can get you to take a baby step and go, oh my God, I took that step, I'm okay, the world hasn't crashed, my loved one hasn't died. Okay, what do I do now, Di? And
Right.
how do we move further and further away from, because we get addicted to the addiction.
That's
So,
well, that's
uh,
exactly right, right? So we become our own addicts in our own self. So, another thing that we preach a lot is, especially within the family, is that the family needs to be on the same page. And so we need to go almost to the least common denominator, right? The person who's the most scared, who can do this baby step. But everybody has to be consistent and be willing to follow through, because if they're not, we lose it, right? And believe me, the person who is using and abusing knows the weak link, right? And they jump right in there. Brilliant people, by the way. Very, very, very resourceful. So, don't underestimate for a moment that they don't know exactly what's going on in most instances and how to figure out where they're going with this and what. So, consistency is super, super important. And Brian and I come from the philosophy of baby steps, right? Like, don't go to the extreme thing that you're going to do that you can't follow through on. Make sure that it's something that you really can live with, so that's very, very important. Things like recognizing something as simple as recognizing this person is blowing up your phone and they call 100 times, right? When we're in that state of mind, we answer it 101. And you go, you don't have to do that. That very simple thing as I don't want to answer this phone because I can't deal with this today. I can't. Guess what? You don't have to. Just don't answer the phone. And it sounds like, oh my God, but what if something's up? You'll know somebody will let you know. And it's pretty rare that, that one time is going to be that, but you have to preserve yourself. We hear that one all the time. And I know that was one of mine. Like I have to. It was like this addiction to them, right? Truly. So, consistency, really important, baby steps, and being able to get everybody on the same page. Very important.
Yeah, exactly. And the family members that's using is making decisions that are unhealthy for them. It's pretty obvious that it's unhealthy for them. But where we want you to get to is where you're not attached to that you are making decisions for yourself that are making you healthy. Because a lot of times we don't realize, we think that we're not making a decision, but by doing nothing, we are making the decision to get attached to the disease and its effects, even though we're not using. So as a family member, it's like you say, why do they keep doing this? And so we get sicker and sicker, or even more sick than they do. Um, and I'm not I mean, I'm chuckling, but it's not funny. It's very painful for the family members, and to be able to see, how do you can't see the forest for the trees. How do I get out of this? How do I step out of this where I am not giving up on them, which a lot of people think they are, but you need to take care of yourself. And a
Right.
lot of times when you do make that decision and you start not reacting or engaging in the way that you used to, which was very toxic, sometimes the person who has the problem will say, hey, wait a minute, they're not reacting the way they used to. I'm not getting their attention. I'm not able to manipulate them. I'm not able to make everybody sick. And so guess what? Now I got to face myself,
Right.
because nobody else is dancing with me the way they used to. So,
Exactly. So we call that what Brian was just describing is this wonderful one word, which is called detachment. And people believe that if they detach, they don't love. And that is not a true statement. Although it's not an easy practice, you can love deeply and detach from that situation, person, or whatever's going on. I heard it one time a long time ago where this gentleman and I was in a meeting and he said, it's really easy to detach with hate, which it is. When you're angry, you
mhm.
can go, I'm not talking to them, I'm not doing this, etc. And then he said he moved into detached with like, which was a challenge to learn how to do that. But when he mastered detaching with love, he knew he had arrived. And I agree with that statement, wholeheartedly. It was a process. It was not just, oh, I'm going to go ahead and detach. It just works like that. It is a process, but the greatest gift you can give to yourself is knowing that you still can love and be detached from what is going on in that particular situation that is causing you so much pain. And, again, you need some help to get there. But that is the goal for most of us, right? Is how to detach from the situation, the person, the drug, and be okay within your own skin and knowing that you still can love.
Right. So we don't want something external to be the source of your unhappiness or happiness, meaning get sober, not get sober, happy, not happy. And Di preaches this all the time. She preaches it to me, that, it's an inside job, and we want your happiness to be internal and not contingent upon some external, uh, you know, uh, thing to happen, whether it's your loved one getting sober or not. But I think Di's message is, detach with love, is that in spite of whatever they're doing, you know, you need to be consistent in the fact that in the way that, that it's clear to them that you love them, but you're not co-signing their death certificate by, being caught up in this thing of substance use. Um, that's a very negative thing. So
Yeah,
life goes on.
absolutely. It does. And another area that I see a lot, B, maybe you agree or disagree, but I think that a lot of times people react to a feeling that they're having. For instance, I hear this often, especially with parents and their children, is the guilt they feel that they must have done something wrong or there's something that they're not doing. And I don't think it's necessarily wrong to have the feeling of guilt. But the reality is, when guilt or shame drives us into a situation, it usually turns into a very vicious cycle. My philosophy on this, and B and I believe agree on this one, which is you have no problem feeling the feeling. If guilt is the feeling you're having, lots of us have feelings often, right? The idea is to feel the feeling and give yourself permission to do that, but that doesn't necessarily mean I have to react to the feeling I'm having, because a lot of times our feelings are not true, right? Like they're not informative. They are not exactly what's really going on. So checking in with, and why we always, you know, insist on people trying to get a support network. And it doesn't have to be a huge support network. It needs to be a few people who know you and can be objective. And when I get into a stuck moment of feeling guilty, I may call Bry and say, hey, I'm in this feeling. And he gives me perspective because he knows me so well, as to whether or not that makes sense or doesn't make sense, because sometimes I can't pull myself out of that. And so, therefore, I recommend strongly when you're having feelings, and, the guilt ones are the ones that can drive us into doing things that we probably shouldn't be doing. Um, Again, I can't tell someone how to not feel it, but I go, it's okay to feel it and allow yourself that 10-15 minutes to feel, and then figure out, do I get curious with yourself rather than a reaction, right? I'm always, preaching respond rather than react. B, got any thoughts about that one?
Yeah, reacting is, one of the things we want to really, you know, tap down because we can really get caught up in I don't know, the hysteria, almost of the whole thing because, you know, rationally you're saying this doesn't make any sense, but yet, you know, how do I make sense of something, that doesn't make sense? And a lot of people say, oh, it must be my fault. So in some ways that gives them a sense of, okay, now I know why this person is acting like this because it's my fault, when in fact it's not your fault, but you're just looking for an answer. Like if I could pinpoint what it is, then maybe I can deal with it or cope with it. But
Right. And
why
families get,
repress all these feelings? Why be alone? You don't have to be alone in these feelings that are widespread in families that have an active, family member that's active in addiction. And so, therefore, talking to Di or talking to me or talking to another counselor or being around other families that have the same situation going on, so you don't feel terminally unique, that you're the only ones. So you don't have to be alone unless you choose to be.
right. We always kind of joke around about, like, here, most family members try to put a rational spin on irrational behavior. And when,
Exactly.
when we say to them, you need to stop trying to figure this out in a rational sense, you're dealing with something that is not rational. And so you're not going to get there. You can try it every which way but loose, and it's not going to work because it's not rational behavior. That's not the way that most people, when they're in their, addicted state of mind, are acting. But, when you start to really recognize these things, again, by not being stuck in your own self, because again, if I only have me to think about me, I will spin it 9,000 different ways, but it will be the same, right? It'll come out the same way. We do need objective opinions. We need to understand. We need to see that we're not the only ones out there doing this, and that, there are other people that have survived through all of this. And actually, for me personally, and B, maybe you feel the same way, once I got into it, it actually was so much easier to live with these tools and tips and techniques than it was to live the other way. I mean, I was a hot mess, and it was very, very uncomfortable. But I mean, I like it was debilitating, truly. And so there are these wonderful ways to be able to do this a different way. And we encourage you to stay out of the midst of a chaotic, for lack of a better word, shitstorm, and
Right.
get into a very calm, yes, there's many tools and techniques that we can use. We encourage you to do that and take it step by step by step.
Now you've made us an R-rated podcast, with
I'm
this.
so sorry, but it's what it is.
I'm teasing. But it's so hard to accept it and get to a place of acceptance with this when it's your loved one and you want to control it, you want to fix it. But the more you resist it, the more you're going to suffer. And when I say resist it, is that thought that you can control it or fix it on your own, which you can, and it's very frustrating. But once you move over to that place of acceptance, detach with love, not hate, like Di said, it's way more palatable. And again, easier said than done, but we've just seen so many families, and we call it healing families shattered by addiction. We see so many families healing, and they're like having aha moments, like that was easy. But and if you don't know, you don't know, right? So what we try and do is give you what we know based on our education and experience, what works. So
Beautiful. Well, we probably overloaded people on this one, but there's lots and lots more tools and techniques, right? So probably should reach out and do a free consult with us, or send us a question on info@familyandaddictionsexperts.com. We'd love that. We would love that. We would love to help. There is a free family survival kit with all kinds of information on there for people to gather if they have questions and more. Right, B, on our website?
yeah, absolutely. They can download them, and it's no charge. And there's some really good articles in there, and some tools and techniques, like you said, that are in there. If you want to take the time to educate yourself.
I think that's the biggest thing. You just nailed it, right? We need to get educated, because how do you know? How do you know what you don't know?
Exactly.
All right.
Well, always good to be with you, and
You too.
stay calm in the midst of chaos.
Yes, please do. Thank you. Thanks so much for joining our podcast, Healing Families Shattered by Addiction. We'll be back in a couple of weeks with more important tools, techniques, and ways for you to focus on you instead of the alcoholic or addict in your world.
Until then, please go to our website, familyandaddictionexperts.com. That's familyandaddictionexperts.com. You'll also see links to our Facebook and Instagram pages. Please also, if you have any emails that you would like to send us, that's info@familyandaddictionexperts.com. That's info@familyandaddictionexperts.com. With any thoughts, feelings, questions that you may have for us, we would love to hear from you, and we look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks.